Hello everybody. So in today's video I want to talk about free stocks in the healthcare space, and I title this Value and Hypergrowth Combined. The free companies they're free stocks that I own, and those free companies I believe are both inexpensive and also growing very fast. And by the way, I also consider even TransMedics to be inexpensive because, granted, EV over revenue of 13 may seem a little high, but look at that revenue growth at 78% next 12 months estimated. This company is growing like a weed. So even if you adjust for that growth, it's still cheap. Clearly not as cheap as, say, Hims or Lantheus, which are two stocks that I've covered before on the channel, especially Hims, right? On this channel, I love Hims. Talk about it a lot. Lantheus and TransMedics talked about it a little less because they're kind of more legacy healthcare plays, but they're still in this renewal of healthcare space. They're still innovative companies, new ideas, new products getting adopted and following that adoption curve, which is my style of investing, right? I like to buy a stock when the product or the service is getting used, and I like to sell when everybody uses the product or service. That's my style of investing. These companies are still very little known and they're still new. But before I go through each of these stocks, let me just briefly discuss why would anybody invest in healthcare? Why is that a great space now? And of course, a lot of value investors, a lot of legacy moat investors, Ben Graham type of investors, they love healthcare because they say, oh, you got patents protect you, etc. That is not the reason why I invest in healthcare. I don't invest in healthcare for moats. I invest in healthcare because I believe this is a space that could get much bigger. And that for a few reasons. One of them is demographics. Demographics are kind of destiny for our country. And as far as the West is concerned, as far as the US is concerned, we have very much an aging population, and there's nothing we can do about that. And so there's going to be more and more demand for healthcare, and that is built in the demographics, and that is recession-resistant demand, right? Your demand for, say, a heart transplant is not dependent on the economy. Your demand for getting a scan, a CT scan of your colon because or your prostate because you think you have prostate cancer, getting that scan, that's not dependent on the economy. Needing ED drugs in the case of Hims, that has nothing to do with the economy. Like, all of this stuff is recession resistant. It's built-in demand for that space, and that demand is slated to grow in the decades to come, or at least the one decade that is to come, which is the one I'm most interested in. When I buy a stock, I typically hold it for a 10-year period at a minimum. So demographics is point number one. There's guaranteed customers. That's why I love healthcare. I also love healthcare because of the social-cultural megatrend of health. More and more people value their health, and that is not just in the tech space, not just in the YouTube sphere, and we've seen things about longevity getting very, very popular in the digital culture that we live in nowadays. But also there's a general awareness, right? How many people actually go out and try to buy healthy food and whole foods as opposed to buying manufactured products, manufactured goods like Pepsi snacks, all of that sort of stuff? That's on the way out. Fewer people buy those. More and more people place a lot of value on their health. And again, that is a driver, in my view, of these healthcare stocks. And I want to put this quote out there. This is a provocative quote from Peter Diamandis, which is he's a futurist that I like very much. Highly recommend all of his books, especially his latest book, The Future is Faster Than You Think. It's a great book. But the question is, what is going to be the biggest industry in the future? Is it going to be digital? Is it going to be energy? Is it going to be transportation? Is it going to be entertainment? What's it going to be? And he made this quote that really made me think really long and hard about this, which is this: which 80-year-old would not spend most of his wealth to expand his life by 20 years? So what 80-year-old person would not spend most of their wealth to expand their life another 20 years and reach 100. And when you really start asking that question, and you think about people in their 80s, you're like, well, it seems pretty obvious that a lot of people in their 80s, maybe not most of their wealth, maybe they want to leave a little bit to their heirs, but it's not unthinkable that some people would be willing to spend half their wealth to expand their life by 20 years. And if you internalize that quote, you understand that really the economic issue of health system running out of money, I mean, what are people gonna do if health systems stop paying for your healthcare? And sure. I mean, in the U.S. we don't really have we have Medicare, but Medicare doesn't cover everything, so we don't have as much of a built-in system as say in Europe, where it's built in to the tax system and into the tax code. We have a little bit of that in the U.S. But the point is, those health systems, those affordable, those healthcare systems, they're going to be running out of money. And then you may say, oh, well, that's a headwind, right? Because if they run out of money, they're not going to pay for certain procedures. They're not going to pay for certain surgeries, certain this, certain that, because they say you're in your 80s, for example, and they don't want to pay for that. Well, what are you going to do if you have the money? You're going to pay for yourself. You're going to pay for your own procedure because you care about your own life. So in my view, even if the systems of reimbursement go away, there's still going to be tremendous demand. And I didn't talk about it in this video, but that's why I believe in the field of genetics. And I think some of the advancements in genomics is absolutely insane. If you see some of these latest treatments, especially what they're working on in the case of leukemia, sickle cell disease, well, if you have a sickle cell disease, you can pay $2 million to get that removed. Takes about 6 months. It's a gene therapy. It's $2 million. Employers rush to not cover this in employee health care. But if you have that disease and you have the millions, you might be paying for it, right? So we're gonna have a lot of cures coming up, and the people who have saved, the older people, they're gonna pay for that. And I want to say they're going to pay for it because of that quote, which I find very powerful. Which 8-year-old would not spend most of his wealth to expand his life by 20 years? I can tell you, if I was 80 and I was in bad health, I would definitely consider spending 80-90% of all I have to expand my life by 20 years. I would definitely consider that. I think most people would. This is a brilliant quote from Diamandis. And of course, the health system's running out of money. That's also part of the Hims thesis and the Lantheus thesis. As was health insurance, by health system, I don't mean like hospital system, I mean insurance. I should write insurance, health insurance systems. As they start putting on more copays, more deductibles, it's deductible galore in America in so many health plans. As they keep adding all of these things that are not covered, people are simply not going to go through legacy health. They're going to use a tool like Hims, where it's just a subscription. And you just get the drugs for the mail, and you don't get the brand drug anymore. Nobody really cares about the brand pharmaceutical anymore. You get the thing that's out of patent, that's been out of patent for more than 20 years. Same for Lantheus in a more positive light, because Lantheus has definitely a very positive approach to health, right? It's a radiopharmaceutical that helps you detect cancer sooner. In their case, prostate cancer. It helps you detect it sooner when it's cheap to cure, when it's less chemo to cure, when you can intervene. That's what radiopharmaceuticals do. They help you detect the cancer sooner than the traditional radiology setups. That's also something that enables great savings, not to mention tremendous outcomes, right? Because you can probably, if you catch it early, it's probably not that expensive of a treatment and not that painful of a treatment if you catch it early. That's what Lantheus does. So these economic imperatives are getting addressed by companies like Hims and Lantheus. And the last one is a technological megatrend. And so, of course, that would cover what I was saying earlier about genomics. And so CRISPR, for example, is a company that I find very interesting in the space. CRISPR is the one that has the sickle cell disease cure. It's a cure, let's call it what it is, that they are selling for $2 million. Well, TMDX is another example of this technological megatrend, this time relying on their organ care system, which is just these machines who take care of an organ outside of the body. Once the surgeon removed the organ from the body, it can live on in this machine. This machine mimics the bodily environment. And so I mean, what are the implications of a system like this? Of course, the things that comes to mind is could they make an artificial womb? That's kind of the thing that would come to mind when I think about that. I mean, this is, if you look at TMDX and their machines, you're like, this is straight out of science fiction. And yet it's there. And yet this company is growing at 78% next 12 months predicted, right? Yet it's there. And of course, TMDX is relying on existing demand. There's a tremendous demand to satisfy, and this technological innovation enables that, right? I could have taken as a technological megatrend type company, I could have used Intuitive Surgical with a Da Vinci robot in there as well. That would have qualified. So let me just go through each stock. And again, I've been through this many times on this channel, but really briefly, I'm going to tell you my thoughts right now and how I still feel about them. How do I still feel about them? Well, Hims, if you follow this channel, you've heard me cover Hims so many times. And the only commentary I have about Hims right now is that, yeah, the stock is down. That's not Hims stock. That's for my later argument, by the way. But the stock of Hims is down, down to the $12 range. A lot of people are saying it's because of the CEO tweets. And, I don't know if it's because of the CEO tweets. Frankly, I am not an expert at politics. I don't know much about this, but I do know something about business, and I know it's a controversial take, but in my view, leaders matter very little when a business already has a solid foundation, right? Mary Barra at GM, good luck. You may be a great leader if you have to deal with unions and local governments and presidents tweeting at you. Good luck trying to change the business. You've been put at the helm of a business that doesn't have a good base, right? So in my view, leaders, they matter a lot in the beginning, in the early days. In the very early days, they matter a lot, but I don't think they matter as much when the business is already established. As far as I'm concerned with Hims, the business is already established, and so the CEO, he's gonna tweet. We know the research. We know CEOs should stay out of politics, right? We know what happened to so many different companies. Bud Light comes to mind, but not only we know CEOs should stay out of politics, but it's their personal account, and that's just the way it is. So I don't think it's material at all for the stock. It definitely doesn't deter me from owning the stocks. CEOs are just going to be CEOs, and that's their free speech. They say what they think. That's unrelated to what I want to say. What I want to say, it's unrelated to the business. My Hims thesis is KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. The KISS strategy, which I've been into that ward for a while. What is a KISS strategy? Well, it's very simple. Do we need 45,000 pharmacies when we have same-day shipping? Right? Do we need to have a drive-through pharmacy where you yell your last name and when they hand you the drug and you're breaking a whole bunch of violations? Do we need any of that? And the answer to that, for me, is so obviously no. And of course, if you look at the stock of CVS, I think CVS is about 10,000 pharmacies. It's one of the bigger pharmacy networks in the US, of course. What are you going to do? 10,000 pharmacies? I mean, no. This is not the way it works in the 21st century. In the 21st century, you don't need that many pharmacies. You need a few fully automated warehouses, and that is the case of Hims. Hims has 2 highly automated warehouses that just ship the pharmaceuticals to the customers. Also, do we need insurance then, right? Do we need insurance when the co-pays cost more than the full cost of 2 automated pharmacy warehouses? Like, do we need insurance when we don't have to pay for this giant infrastructure, right? I mean, it'd be nice if we could have insurance that I suppose could cover $50 or $100 a month of drugs. But the point is, these drugs are $50 to $100 because you don't have to finance, in the case of CVS, 10,000 pharmacies, right? Hundreds of thousands of employees just standing around at the cash register, stocking the product in the shelves, selling, I think CVS sells things like ice cream and alcohol. Does that really sound like a pharmacy? Like even something legitimate for a pharmacy to do, to sell a bunch of junk foods? Anyways, these businesses are stuck in the middle, in my view. They are entirely stuck in the middle. I think they've lost their way. And the answer to the question, do we need 45,000 pharmacies in the United States? The answer to that question is no. Do we need insurance? Well, it'd be nice, but insurance is designed for this system of cost, and therefore, really, when buying direct from an automated warehouse is cheaper than buying through your insurance, then you're just going to buy from the automated warehouse. So simple health issues can be solved by a simple online prescription. And that is, I think, one of the chief thesis of Hims. There's other aspects to Hims. Another aspect is the fact that you get to see a doctor by clicking a button, and you don't have to deal through the complexity of the health system and through the uncertainty of the cost of that visit, which is another aspect of Hims that I don't discuss here. But to me, the most glaring simple aspect is we don't need that very many pharmacy, and so Mark Cuban's Cost Plus Drugs, Amazon Pharmacy, if they one day succeed at it, all of these setups, I think they're going to take over. It's just going to happen eventually. At least that is my view. That's why I own Hims. Hims is still predicted to grow at 41%, and it is the cheapest stock in that spreadsheet. On my spreadsheet, I use enterprise value over gross profit over revenue growth. This is my spin on Peter Lynch's PEG ratio, right? And if it's under 0.5, that means it's a cheap stock. In the case of Hims, 0.08, we are back at the cheapest times that Hims has been, right? When it was trading at 15, 16, it wasn't as cheap. Now it's cheap again, trading at 12. I am buying Hims. I actually bought a bunch of Hims lately, especially today. I bought some today. Moving on to Lantheus. So I've told a little bit about Lantheus. I don't have too much to say about Lantheus, except that they are in the screening and prevention space. I know that is a major space in healthcare. I like that space very much. I know, for example, Kathy Wood is very big on this company Schrödinger that uses stool and analyzes stool, and based on someone's stool can tell, oh, you have this disease, you have that disease. Screening is key to healthcare, right? If you screen, you have a problem early. If you know early, it's going to be no big deal to get it fixed. If you know late, that's when it gets a big deal. That's why this so fits in this field and in this idea of longevity. And radiopharmaceutical, they're niche, and sometimes you don't want to be a cynic, but kind of makes you wonder why radiopharmaceuticals are so niche. Maybe there's not as much money to be made if you catch on a disease too early, right? Maybe you don't make as much money as a legacy player in the space if you don't catch it on too early, and therefore there's very little competition in the radiopharmaceutical space, in the space of drugs that help you catch diseases earlier, when they are easier to cure and when they are more likely to be cured. So as far as ethical businesses go, by the way, this is probably one of the most ethical business stock I own. This is one of the most ethical stocks I own. I can't think of one that does more good for society. Like, you can't argue that this is a business that does good for society. Like, it helps you figure out you have cancer sooner than if you didn't have the drug. It's a radiopharmaceutical. From memory, I think they charge something like $130 for this agent, for this suspension, they call it. And what they do is they inject it, and then you go do your radio with the injection. You wait a little bit, and then you go to the radio, and then the radio machine, just the PET imaging machine, the PET scan, just detects it more easily. And they go on the technicals in the call, and they go on the technicals in the PowerPoint. Don't care as much about the technicality. Perhaps I should, but I don't have enough time for that. I don't have enough time for that. Trying to understand. Anyways, don't have enough time for that. When I look at the numbers, it's predicted to grow at 20%. Are they gonna beat that? It may be that they beat that. They've already beat it this quarter, which is why the stock today is up 16%. Is it a business that's gonna normalize maybe at 25% growth? Yeah, likely. And so, anyways, doesn't really matter. This business is very cheap, and this business is extremely profitable at a 44% EBITDA margin. This is a cheap stock, and it's still going to do an EPS. And I don't like GAAP accounting too much on this channel, but it's still going to be predicted to do between $7 and $7.20 of EPS for FY 2024. So an inexpensive company relative to how much money it's going to make. Happy to own it, only trading at 3 times sales. And the last stock, and I still have to get to that conference call, but I've watched a few reviews of the conference call, and it's as good as it gets per what I can tell. The demand is through the roof for TransMedics. TransMedics is simply a revolutionary company in the heart transplant system. It is a disruptor of dry ice. In the past, organ transplants happen with an organ being removed from, unfortunately, a deceased patient. You remove the organ, you put it on dry ice, you have to book a private jet because the organ cannot travel on commercial airlines, so you have to book a private jet. You have to fly it to the most likely to succeed recipient, and then the surgery has to go through, and it's a process where there is so much waste, and so many of these organs end up not making it to the recipient. And therefore, TransMedics does 2 things to solve that problem. The first is, instead of dry ice, it has this machine, which can I say, kind of looks like an artificial womb, if you ask me. But for an organ, you put the organ, and the machine will keep the organ alive until it can be cozily delivered on the other side of the country. And then they have invested in their own airline for transporting these machines. And that's a tiny airline, and you can see it inside. You can see the TransMedics case right there. Why did they buy an airline? Well, first of all, they got it on the cheap. It was a flight school, and so they shut down the flight school, and they bought the planes on the cheap, right, at lower than book value for those planes. You can see the machine. You roll it on in the plane. Why did they buy an airline? Well, it's very simple. In America, 1 day out of 3, roughly, you can't get a jet. Because maybe there's a sporting event somewhere and all of the celebrities have taken all of the jets. And so that actually created a lot of waste because you don't know when organs are going to show up. You don't know when organ transplants are going to happen, right? Because unfortunately, you do not calculate when someone deceases. You can't predict that. Now, by having their own planes, they can really unlock a lot of growth. And it's frankly, it's the only airline I would ever own. I mean, it might be even interesting to show this to Warren Buffett because he keeps saying he would never buy an airline, and he has a 1-800 number that he calls whenever he feels depressed and wants to buy an airline. Like this is kind of putting the idea of a business of an airline upside down and making it attractive because that airline enables so much business. So I still need to listen to the call, but the reviews I've listened to tells me it's really, really good. And that stock was up more than 30% in a day. More than 30%. So happy to own this one, very much so. And to conclude, right, this was it. This is no investment advice. This is no financial advice. This is just entertainment and entertainment only on this channel. I appreciate your likes, appreciate your subscribes. Thanks for watching and have a wonderful day.